You know that feeling when you scroll through 100 listings, see a PTZ camera that promises studio-grade 4K and 20 zoom, and then you finally get it home only to discover the focus is hunting, the low-light image looks grainy, or the menu is a maze. I've been there, and that hesitation is why I'm doing this deep dive. I want to make sure you don't waste money on a camera that looks great on paper but falls short when you actually need it. Link is in the description if you want to check the product details on Amazon. First off, the BirdDog X5 Ultra is marketed as a plug-and-play PTZ solution for everything from worship services to remote production trucks. The big selling points are its 4K 60 video at up to 20 optical zoom, built-in NDI HX3 for low-latency streaming, and two little 2.93-inch INC screens that are supposed to give you instant readouts without burning power. Those are all solid claims, but the real question is how they translate when you're actually behind a laptop, trying to switch between a speaker on stage and a slideshow on a screen. Let's start with ease of use. In my testing, the X5 Ultra lives up to the plug-and-play promise because the Ethernet connection is truly plug-and-play. You hook it up to a router, assign an IP, and the camera appears in any NDI-compatible software within seconds. There's no need for separate drivers or a tangled mess of USB cables. The two INC displays are a subtle but clever touch. One shows the IP address and the other gives you a quick glance at the current zoom level and focus mode. Because INC doesn't flicker, you can glance at the info even in a dark room without draining the camera's power supply. That said, the menus themselves are a bit old school. You scroll through a hierarchy of text-only options with a joystick, which can feel clunky if you're used to touch screens. It's not a deal-breaker, but it does add a few extra seconds the first time you try to program a custom preset. Autofocus confidence is a major concern for anyone who wants to run a live stream without a dedicated focus puller. The X5 Ultra uses a color matrix sensor that claims good performance in low light, and in practice it does a decent job when you're shooting a lit stage or an outdoor event in daylight. The focus locks quickly on high-contrast subjects, a presenter in a bright shirt, for example, and it stays steady while you pan between a speaker and a projected slide. However, when you move into a dimly lit area, the autofocus can hunt for a moment before settling. If you're planning to use the camera for a worship service where the altar lighting drops to a soft wash, you might need to switch to manual focus or preset a focus distance to avoid that brief wobble. Low light behavior is tied to that same sensor. The color matrix technology does a better job than many entry-level PTZ units at preserving color detail in dim settings, but it isn't a miracle. In a test where I recorded a speaker under a single softbox, the image stayed usable at f/2.8, but you could see a slight increase in noise around the edges of the frame. If you rely on the X5 Ultra for a conference room with just ceiling lights, expect a small amount of grain, and consider adding a bit of supplemental lighting if you need a pristine look. Stabilization is another practical factor. The X5 Ultra doesn't have any in-body sensor shift or optical image stabilization because it's a PTZ camera meant to be mounted on a tripod or a ceiling rig. The 20 optical zoom is purely lens-based, so any movement of the mount translates directly to the image. In most static setups, a ceiling mount in a studio or a tripod on a tripod, that's fine. If you intend to move the camera around on a dolly or a gimbal, you'll need to add external stabilization. For most live streaming scenarios, a solid mount solves the issue. Now let's talk about the lens ecosystem, or rather the lack of one. The X5 Ultra comes with a fixed 20 optical zoom lens that covers a decent field of view, from wide angle to a close-up on a presenter's face. There's no interchangeable lens mount, which means you're locked into that focal range. For many churches, schools, or small production houses, that's a sweet spot because you get a lot of coverage without swapping lenses. If you need ultra-wide coverage for a large stage or a tight-close macro for product detail, you'll have to look elsewhere. The camera does support digital zoom on top of the optical, but that degrades quality, so it's best used sparingly. Battery confidence is a bit of a gray area because the X5 Ultra is primarily powered via PoE, Power over Ethernet. In a fixed installation, that's an advantage. You never have to worry about swapping batteries during a live broadcast. For on-the-go use, you can attach an external UPS or a PoE injector with a battery backup, but the camera itself.